what we're going to do during the next hour. They've been asked to talk about, for their business, what do they think that utopian success looks like? And the question for them really is, what is needed to achieve that utopian success? We had an excellent paper yesterday from Philip Laird, who talked about Melbourne-Sydney, there being an annual freight task of 10 million tonnes a year, and only 1 million tonnes a year of that is on rail. So that makes financial sense, but in fact on a treble bottom line it doesn't make sense. How can the industry rise to overcome that kind of challenge?
I guess one of the big issues is looking at Sydney CBD and Melbourne CBD. There are containers coming into the Port of Brisbane now, bound for, say, West Sydney. It's quicker to bring them in through the Port of Brisbane than to deal with the difficult traffic situations in Sydney. And that may well explain why road is so preferable, because you've got it's door to door as opposed to unloading containers and reloading them. I mean, I think that could be more the explanation on why there's a reticence to go to rail, because of what for the trucking industry is pretty well an ideal trucking distance.
And what would the advantages be to you if the port and the rail network was under a single ownership and control?
I think you'd lift productivity straight away. You certainly sort out the who's who in the zoo. The blame game stops immediately. I'm sure if those of you who heard the Rio paper this morning by Richard Cohen would recognise that in the Rio organisation there's not much point in blaming the port or the stockyard or the train or the mine or something else, because after all they're the people you work with. But that's the daily scenario that I work with, where people say, well, you know, if the train would have arrived on time, this would have been better, da-da-da. So the advantages are significant in stopping that. The advantages then flow through to, I would say, much greater reliability in the estimate of throughput, through to increasing the throughput, I suspect, by as much as 10 to 15%.
I'd like to move on to ask Peter Newman if he might share some thoughts with us.
Policy is really about politics, so I suppose my main thing is about how you get things through. It's not enough to have the vision, you've got to be able to show how to get it through the system. Suddenly, in the last 2 years, you've had this dramatic increase in rail usage, 18% increase in the last year in Melbourne. Everything now full. So the future is to dramatically expand that system, and it's not easy to do that. Here we've got quite a bit of potential just adding on extra carriages, but there are real limits in Melbourne and Sydney and Brisbane, and so the capacity increases that have to be done now, those decisions are going to require very substantial funding. Transformative kind of work needs to now happen, of a kind that comes along once every couple of generations, and that is the opportunity that's now presented to Melbourne, Sydney, Brisbane, Adelaide, and it is an opportunity we must grasp.
We in Western Australia have taken on what we call the Grain Express model. Our challenge will be the implementation of that model this year and in the future, and to improve that model. But the point that I should make is that Ken made it in his speech, is that, you know, we've got the sign-off we've got the support from government, we've got the support from the acquirers, we've got the support from the rail operators, we've got the support from the industry, the growers themselves. So in the long term, it looks like a green light for our industry.
The group came together, which was Westnet, ARG, the Esperance Port Authority and the mine himself. We used a consulting group to help us do the planning. As I said, the first principles were one set of numbers, and let's go back to grassroots and see what the actual root causes of the inadequacies of the supply chain were. At the time, the total system was running at about 88%. As of last month, it was running at about 95%, so it's significant growth. That was done with no capital spend whatsoever.
Visiting this year, as opposed to many years before, is an emerging enthusiasm among rail people, an understanding that perhaps there is another era for rail upon us. I would think, we heard one speaker today say that that happened in the 60s. It's an opportunity we shouldn't let go by. We should be grasping it and building on that enthusiasm that I've seen in all the cities that I've been in.